help me find my dad?
I don't know where my papa is.
You know where my dad is?
That's enough.
My dad.
What are you guys doing?
Oh. Never mind.
Why you always eating?
Like, and you don't even bring us food.
Yeah.
What y'all think?
What flavor is that?
I don't know. It's like strawberry cream. Or
Man,
try.
I bet that tastes pretty good.
My mommy said I could have some.
Couldn't have scooped us up one, you know?
I'm not the one who bought this, man.
You could have grabbed us one.
Shout out Mama Dukes, man. She hit me up.
Fake.
My bad.
I'm gonna go home and cry.
I can't see what I'm doing because the thing is over my
Personal
eyes.
problems. I'm losing blood flow to my head.
He's got
Don't see me complaining.
boy got a PJ mask on for a 3-year-old. what if halfway through here just passes out from blood loss, like poor circulation to his brain.
If that happens, we're not going to pay him anymore.
Boom.
He's going to continue on.
It just falls over.
He's going to be alright.
That man all right?
He's in the middle of his application.
And that is why you always buy a mask that fits your face right. Oh, all right. We ready? All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Bible Unscripted, a podcast brought to you by the Lebanon Student Ministry. I'm Pastor Sean, the student pastor here at the church, and here with me I have my two interns in the Winnie the Pooh suit is... You're supposed to respond. Oh, no. All right. And the masked man himself.
Oh, gosh, bro. That's freaking Captain France or something.
I don't know if I'm crying from how tight the mask is or how funny this is.
We got Captain Cameron to the rescue.
Captain Russia.
Oh.
Captain Communism.
Oh my goodness. So we are back bringing you another chapter out of the book of Genesis. Last time while we were in the book of Genesis, a story about a bunch of sinful people. We learned about how Abram trusted God, but he didn't trust God fully and decided to bring Abel along with him, and that didn't go along too well. And then Abram was a little impatient with God. He really wanted God to fulfill a promise that he had made to him to make his name great and make the family great, but God was doing it on his own time, and Abram wanted it to happen on his time, and so he was kind of rushing God along. But by the end of the chapter, we did get through the kind of weird vision that Abram has with burning sacrifices and vultures and a smoking pot thing that floats in between it. And ultimately, we came down to how God is the one that fulfills the covenants and the promises in our lives. We don't fulfill those. Instead, we're just there to partake in them, but it's God alone who fulfills those. And today, as we go through chapter 16, we're going to see how Steve doesn't have any idea what's going on. For those of you who are in the room with us, one of our staff just walked by and looked extremely confused at what was happening in this room.
Well, I was looking for my son.
But we're going to be in chapter 16 today, and we're going to see Abram's wife, Sarai, make a very, very, what I would consider silly decision that ends up in a lot of bad consequences. So I'm going to read chapter 16 because it's only like it's 16 verses. Look at that. Chapter 16 verses, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. And it says, "Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had bore him no children. But she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar, so she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed to do what Sarai said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. When she knew that she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong that I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows that she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." "Your slave is in your hands," Abram said. "Do with her whatever you think is best." Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" "I'm running away from my mistress Sarai," she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The angel added, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." And the angel of the Lord also said to her, "You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man, and his hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees me." For she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." That is why the well was called Ber Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had bore. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Man, let's talk about this. People are crazy, and I would say crazy impatient, right? So Sarai, she obviously knew the promise that God had presented to Abram, that I'm going to make your name great, you're going to have all these descendants and all these things, you're going to be as numerous as the stars, but she's getting a little bit upset because she realizes she's not having children, and she's probably not able to have children. And in this time, especially in the Bible time, that was how women kind of honored their husband. That was really what women were, that was kind of their role in the family, was to have children. And so for a woman not to be able to have children, it would have been super shameful. It would have been very upsetting for her. And so she's struggling with that. And so Sarah comes up with a little less than a good plan, right? So she makes this decision. You know what? I've got this Egyptian slave named Hagar. And based on some of the commentaries I've read, Hagar likely came from when they went to Egypt. Remember the whole situation where Abram lied, said Sarai was his sister when really it was his wife, and Pharaoh took her, right? This likely came from that. She was probably one of the Egyptians that they handed over as kind of a payment for Abram and his people to get out of Egypt. And so Hagar is Sarai's slave, and so she is going to give her over to Abram. Well, again, this kind of shows us how sin continues to kind of snowball, right? If Abram didn't go against God and go to Egypt and then didn't lie and go into Egypt, then Hagar wouldn't have been around. But we see that our sin kind of follows us, and it causes more issues and more pain in our life. And so Sarai's getting worried. She kind of rushes this thing, and she gives Hagar over to Abram, and Abram accepts her. And he, that's the thing that I think we lose sight of. A lot of times we jump to Sarai, who's like the one who pushed Hagar towards Abram, but Abram's also the husband who accepted it. And it doesn't really show that he tried to fight against it. He was just like, yeah, sure, I'll take your Egyptian slave to make a baby with. I don't know what was going on there. But anyway, they go off, they make a baby. Hagar gets pregnant, and then things get ugly. And so what happens is Hagar starts to treat Sarai poorly. Most likely, Hagar knew that Sarai couldn't have kids, so she probably kind of held that against her, like, look, I'm having a baby. I can get pregnant. You're kind of worthless because you're not able to have children. And that started causing drama, right? We know girls, they love to be into drama. They love to beef. It's all about the tea, right? And so they start beefing. Sarai starts treating Hagar bad, and so what happens? Hagar dips. She's like, I ain't gonna deal with this. I'm out. So she dips. She runs on. She, goes off, and she's out in the desert. And it tells us that the spirit of the Lord, the angel of the Lord went to her and called her to come back to Sarai and Abram. Because ultimately we realize you can't hide from God. Like, you can hide from Sarah, you can hide from Abram, but you're not going to be able to hide from God. And God had a plan in this. Like, I don't think it was God's plan for them to do this, but because they made this sinful choice to have Hagar have a baby with Abram, God still is going to bring something from that. And so he encourages her to come back. And I'm going to make your son's name, or your son's number, numerous, just like I will Abram's. And so Ishmael is the father of the Arabic people. So when you read that last little bit, right, it kind of makes a lot of sense. They describe Ishmael as being this wild donkey of a man, and like everybody's kind of against him and he's against everybody. The Arabic culture is one that is typically of a lot of hostility, right? Like you just look in the news and you see that there's a lot of hostility between the inner people of the Arabic culture, but also hostility outwards towards others. And specifically in time past, Jewish and Christian people were attacked or, hated by the Arabic population. And so it's kind of interesting how you're seeing that come from this, right? We know that for Abram and his offspring and coming from later on down the road, that ultimately leads to the Christian population. And then we have this Ishmael and his family, which ultimately led to the Arabic population. And there's this feud that started all the way back in the Bible with Hagar, Sarai, and Abram. And so she did listen, though. She came back. She bore Ishmael. They had the son. And then we go on into chapter 17. So let's talk about this crazy story of it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, hey, sleep with my servant and have a baby through her and all this kind of stuff. So what does that have to do with us today? How does that apply to us?
For starters, the snowball effect of that is so deep. Like, something that happened so many years ago that had so many things have passed since then, and it still got brought down to this. I'm gonna need you to take me serious. This is my application.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm trying to look at you, but I'm really trying. I'm trying to hold it together. All right. Go ahead.
Anyways, we need to think further about the things that we do, because each of our actions. Are you good? I'm sorry. I'm really trying.
His eyes are legit being squeezed out of the mask.
I just can't.
You're going to have the worst headache after this. I can literally see that it is squeezing your face.
I'm trying so hard.
Anyways.
All right. We have to think ahead of time before we do wrong. We have to consider that, maybe this is going to suck, and that's something I could justify in this time now. I'll get over that. But we don't always take for granted, how many things are going to fall after that. You can lie to someone, and they're going to lose that trust for you for maybe months or years. And we don't register that that's, a deep effect if we just wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that too. Is a lot of times we don't think about how sin, it's like a domino effect, or like a ripple in the water, right? Like if you throw a rock in the water, it doesn't just splash in one spot, right? It just kind of creates this ripple effect. Sin is the same way. When we sin, there's more than we see. It affects us in that moment, but it also affects a lot of other people, right? There is impact on people around us in our families, people that we might not even know that it affects, and so it ripples out. You think about the situation here. You go back to Abram's poor leadership and choices that he made. Right, even the simple little sinful choices of, well, I'm going to bring Lot, even though God told me not to. right? And then look how those things have spiraled. Well, I'm not going to really trust God in this moment, so I'm going to take my family to Egypt because I don't know if God's really going to protect us out here in the desert. And then now that ripple of sin, you have two women that are like ready to kill each other over this whole situation. You've got one woman that's in such a desperate situation. She's running out into the desert. She's like, I'd just rather die out here than have to be living with you crazy people, right? Like that small sin that seems small in the moment, it ripples out and causes so much more than sometimes we ever even realize. So we've got to be mindful in what we do and the actions that we take.
Be honest, man. I think this story specifically is a little hard to take application out of because you don't really see. I'm sure there's situations like that out there, but like you don't really see wives offering up their husbands to another female. But what I would say is being able to discern, and not necessarily just discern, but being able to say no to something. Like just because you're asked to do something doesn't mean you have to do it, which is very cliche, obviously. But like, if like a person of relative significance asks you of a favor to do for them in order to like honor them in this way, if it doesn't honor God, then you don't have to worry about honoring that person who asked, right? Sarai asked Abram to sleep with whatever her name was, Hagar, because she was afraid that she would dishonor Abram and make a fool out of herself because she couldn't bear kids. But the right thing for Abram to do was say no, even though, it would have had a negative impact on Sarai at the moment. Surely he would have seen fruit come later from his decision to say no, because he knows that was God's promise to him. Now, it was going to be carried through one way or another, so he should have stayed faithful to that and to Sarai. So being able to say no to not just sin, but to people who will encourage you to partake in a sin because of whatever reason, being able to say no is a powerful thing that you need to learn in any stage of life. When you're young, when you're old, there's going to be scenarios where people are going to try and get you to do things that doesn't honor God, but will either honor you in a moment or honor them in a moment or whatever it may be. But the power to say no is going to carry you very far in life. DJ Khaled.
Yeah, I think another thing too we can take from this is just be patient on God's timing. Ultimately that's where the very poor decisions were made in this story, is like God has clearly told Abram, like, I'm bringing you descendants, I'm going to do this. He doesn't necessarily explain exactly how, but he promises these things. But even for Sarai, she's impatient and she's, wanting to see the promise come to fruition. So she's like, oh, well, let me throw my idea into the mix. Well, maybe it happens because of, you sleeping with my servant, my slave. I don't know why in the world she would make that connection of why that'd be the right choice, but she did. But I think we do the same thing too, right? When we're impatient with God, when we have something in our lives that we're waiting for God to kind of answer or to fulfill, a lot of times we want to take it upon ourselves to make that thing happen. When sometimes it might not even be in God's will, right? Like, I love our students, but like we have so many students who are like dying to be in relationships. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, God will bring you the right one when he's going to bring you the right one. But they're like, well, let me date 27 other youth students to find out if they are the right one. And I'm like, I don't think that's really in his will. But, it's just like in our lives, if we're patient, it's going to be so much more rewarding. Like imagine for Sarai, in a couple chapters, we're going to get to the point where she does end up pregnant and she does have a baby for Abram. But now think like she has to, for the rest of her life, carry the thought of, well, dang, I made my husband go sleep with my slave because I didn't really trust God, and now look where it got us, when I could have just waited and God would have actually fulfilled that his plan on his timing. So be patient. Be patient and know that God's at work in your life. It's not about you making the things happen that you want to happen. Allow God to work.
Amen.
So to put it in short, be patient or you're gonna be a stepmama.
Oh, we do not condone teenage pregnancies at all. All right, our main demographic.
That doesn't have to do with anything.
Our main demographic is those of the teenage years. Y'all better be patient. Don't do what Sarai did. Don't do what Agartha did.
Agartha, Hagar, Agartha. My last little piece I do want to throw in there, and then if y'all have got anything, I'll let you say it before we close out. Is think about the way that you impact others. Right? Like Sarai is a woman of faith. Like she believed in God. She followed God just as her husband Abram did. But think of the negative impact she left on Hagar, right? Like this is supposed to be a woman of God who's treated this woman so badly that she would pretty much rather go out in the desert and die than be living with that family any longer. So as believers, we have got, and Hagar came back, but it doesn't mean that they were best buds. I don't imagine it was a very good relationship when they got back. So as believers, think about how you treat other people, because you could very well impact them greatly in a negative way, or you could greatly impact them in a positive way. So every interaction you have, and I know we've all got bad days. We've all got days that we would probably love to WWE slam somebody through a table, but we've got to be mindful, right, of how do I treat this person that's going to impact them for God instead of, cause them to want to go die in a desert, right? Like, let us always leave our connections, with others. Let us leave them in a positive way, showing God and not our worldly side. Y'all got anything else?
No, but I did like how we stared them down to make sure they were. We always
Like whenever you're telling your lessons or you're saying something important, we buck them up. We're like,
talking to you.
You got to break the fourth wall
every once in a
so
while.
that they don't build the fifth wall.
Gosh.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of the Bible Unscripted. We're glad that you joined us today. Make sure you give us a like or a share. Make sure, hey, look, if you're looking for a youth group to be a part of, every Wednesday night, 6:15, we're in the gym. Catch us on Sunday mornings at 10:45 for small groups. We'd love for you to come hang out. If you're looking for a church, come find us at Lebanon Baptist Church on High Cone Road. We'd love for you to join us. I'll let these guys close us out because I don't know what's going to be said right now, but hopefully they'll keep it all right. So thank you for joining us.
Before I close out,
Oh, no.
I would like y'all. I'm gonna start a GoFundMe. I would like
no.
y'all to donate
What is the GoFundMe for?
Cameron
Huh?
for his head surgery that he's going to have to go through.
Oh my gosh.
His
Now that it's on my
brain
ears, I can
damage. His brain damage has been so severe because of this mask that he is actually incapacitated at this very moment. I'm having to edit
Right here.
a 3D
Right
Blender
here.
model.
This is me.
This is a model.
He's
This is a
lying.
3D
Lying is a
model.
sin.
He's
You're being
in
a
the
dirty
hospital
sinner.
currently right now. So I'm
What is
starting
what is
a
honoring-
GoFundMe.
You're not being very, very discerning.
Anyways, make sure you boom on that like button every time you see another video. Every time you see another video on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, maybe Apple Music if you bougie like that. You know what I'm saying? Don't let Russia man get you, because Russians be crazy. Shout out to all my Russian people that are not watching this video. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, I apologize on his behalf.
They gone.
Oh.
Did you turn it off?
Oh. Anyways, guys.
Peace.
We'll see you on the next episode. Wink.
What is wrong with y'all?
My bad, little bruh.
Could have picked any people.